The day they lowered my husband's coffin into the ground, the sky wept harder than I did. Cold rain soaked the black veil clinging to my cheeks, and every drop felt like a punishment from God for the secrets I didn't yet know. I remember gripping the wet soil, whispering, "Goodbye, Henry," believing I was laying to rest the man who had shared my bed for 42 years. If only I'd known that the man inside that coffin wasn't Henry at all. It began with the smallest unease, something only a wife would notice. When the paramedics wheeled in the body after that awful car crash, his face was almost unrecognizable, swollen and bloodied. They said identification was done through his wallet and wedding ring. My knees gave way, and I didn't even question it. I saw the ring, the same gold band with the tiny scratch he got fixing the garden gate, and I simply believed grief makes you blind, and I was already half blind from tears. The house felt haunted after the funeral. Every ticking clock reminded me of his heartbeat. Every creak on the stairs made me turn, hoping it was him coming down for his tea. For weeks I slept on his side of the bed, clutching his wool cardigan that still smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and cedarwood. I talked to his photograph like a madwoman, telling him about the garden, the mail, the awful silence. Then, one morning, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name in Henry's handwriting. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a single line, written in his precise cursive. "Don't trust anyone, especially the man they buried." I dropped the letter like it was burning me. My first thought was insanity, some cruel prank. But the ink was unmistakable. The way his "ye" looped down and back up again like a fisherman's hook. I ran to my desk drawer where I kept old love letters, comparing the strokes. It was him. It had to be. That night, I sat by the window, sleepless, staring into the garden Henry tended for decades. The roses were dying petals browned and curling. I thought about his last day alive, the call from the police, the wrecked car on the bridge. He'd been on his way home from his fishing trip, but the police said they never recovered his fishing gear. Just a suitcase in the trunk, locked. The next morning, I dug it out from storage. The suitcase was scuffed, damp from the crash, and the lock had been broken open earlier by the police, they said. Inside were shirts, socks, and a folded newspaper dated 2 days before the crash. But tucked inside, one sock was something else, a small key, taped to a note that simply read, "For E.M., E.M." Those were my initials, Eleanor May. My heart pounded so hard I thought I'd faint. Henry used to tease me, calling me E.M., my evening miracle. But why hide a key from me? And why warn me not to trust the man they buried? I searched the house for locks that key might fit. The attic chest? No. The shed cabinet? No. By midnight, I found myself in the basement, facing Henry's old workbench. There, behind a shelf of paint cans, was a metal box I'd never seen before, rusted, heavy, locked tight. My trembling hands fitted the key inside, and it turned with a click that echoed like thunder. Inside the box were documents, birth certificates, passports. But not just Henry's, there were 3, all with different names, but the same photograph. My husband's face, staring at me from identities I didn't recognize. Thomas Reed, Samuel Harris, John Keller. My Henry had lived 3 lives before me. The world tilted. I fell to the floor, gasping for breath, whispering, "Who were you, Henry?" Every memory twisted inside me like a knife, the late-night phone calls he dismissed as wrong numbers, the secretive trips, the locked drawer in his study I'd never opened. He had always been kind, gentle, but perhaps not truthful. The next day, I went to the police station. The same detective who handled his accident, Detective Moore. I showed him the passports. His expression didn't change, but his knuckles tightened on the desk. "Mrs. Whittaker," he said softly, "I think you should go home and let us handle this." "But I buried a stranger," I cried. "You said it was Henry. You identified him." He sighed, then looked away. The identification came from personal items. Wallet, ring, car registration. But the body was too damaged for full DNA confirmation. It was expedited under emergency conditions. My stomach turned cold. "You mean it could have been someone else?" He didn't answer. That silence said everything. That night, I tore through Henry's study, searching for anything I'd missed. In a hidden drawer under his writing desk, I found letters bundled with a red ribbon addressed to a woman named Clara. Some postmarked 30 years ago, some recent. My heart dropped as I read the first line of one. "My dearest Clara, she suspects nothing. I'll be free soon." The words blurred before my eyes. My knees gave out. He'd been writing to another woman while married to me? But if he wasn't Henry Whittaker, was I the other woman all along? The phone rang, then shrill in the silence. I froze before answering. A male voice, low and urgent. "Eleanor, don't say my name. You're in danger." They buried the wrong man. The line went dead. I stood there, shaking so badly I dropped the phone. Outside, the wind howled through the trees like a warning. And for the first time since the funeral, I locked every door in the house. When morning came, the front gate was open. Footprints led from the path to the side window, muddy, fresh. Someone had been watching me. That was when I knew Henry wasn't just living a double life. Someone else wanted me to find out, and they weren't finished yet. The morning after the footprints, I boiled water for tea, I didn't drink, and sat at the kitchen table with Henry's letters spread like fallen birds. The house had a particular hush, the kind that makes you think your own heartbeat is an intruder. I kept glancing at the back door, half expecting the knob to turn. When it finally did move, it was only the wind, yet I still apologized under my breath, as if to a ghost. On the table, the newest letter to Clara lay open, the ink so black it seemed wet. "My dearest Clara, she suspects nothing. I'll be free soon," the words hissed. Free from what? From me? From the man he pretended to be, or from the men who wanted him dead? I put the letters back under the ribbon, hands trembling so much the bow came out crooked. Old age does that, fingers soften and betray you. But in the rest of me something hard was waking, something that came from a lifetime of having to stand upright while storms tried to bend you. I went to the window and saw the gate again. The latch was intact. No sign of a break, no splintered wood. Whoever had been here was the sort who could touch your life without leaving bruises. I called the detective. He didn't pick up. But a minute later, my phone rang with an unknown number. the same low voice, urgent and clipped. "You can't trust Moore. He's compromised. Leave the house. Today. Who is this? Who is this?" I whispered, though the kitchen felt empty as a church after midnight. "He's watching the mailbox," the voice said. "Not just your letters, your electricity, your water. Everything has a pattern. When patterns break, they come. Who comes?" I asked, staring at the faucet as though it might answer for the pipes beneath it. Silence. Then, "He told me you'd be brave." My breath snagged. "He. Henry. If you know him," I said, "tell me what his real name is." "I only knew the last one," the voice replied. "And it wasn't Henry." A pause. I could hear traffic, or maybe wind. Then a quick intake of breath. A decision. "Pack a bag. Go to the bus station. Don't use your car. Take the 9:45 to Westford. Someone will meet you with a blue umbrella. Hang up now. The call ended." I stood with the phone against my cheek, the refrigerator humming like a patient animal. Every sensible part of me, the school teacher who balanced the checkbook and reminded Henry to wear his scarf, screamed not to move. The other part, the widow who buried a stranger and found the truth welded inside a metal box, took over. I packed a bag with an old cardigan, a pair of sensible shoes, and the photograph of Henry at the pier, smiling into salt wind. Before I left, I put the kettle on again and let it boil over, a small rebellion against my own habits. If they were watching patterns, let them watch steam instead of silence. At the corner I waited, not for a taxi, but for time to stretch and thin. When the neighbor's dog barked twice, I crossed and cut through the alley the way I did when I was a girl. The city had gathered all the damp and tucked it into that alley. The scent of moss rose from the bricks. I reached the bus stop with my heart beating in my ears and sat where the benches cast narrow shadows. The 9:45 shuddered up with the brakes screaming like crows. I climbed in and took a seat near the back, hoping anonymity would accept me as one of its own. On the bus, faces became landscapes. A man with a nose like a cliff, a girl under a hoodie feeding secrets to her screen, a woman knitting a scarf the color of robin's eggs. I wondered, for the 1,000th time, who had lived beside me all these years pretending to be my husband. My mind kept snagging on the smallest memories, the way he folded towels with the edges all facing one direction, like soldiers called to attention, the way he'd pause at the sound of a helicopter and glance up, not with curiosity, but with a quick scan, like a man counting exits, how he never let me book our trips with my name on the reservations. "You always lose the papers, E. M, let me handle it." And I had laughed and let him. When the bus pulled into Westford, the sky was brighter but brittle, like glass waiting for a thrown stone. I stepped down and scanned the people. There were umbrellas, but only one that was blue. A woman stood beneath it, middle-aged, hair tucked under a neat cap, eyes the calm color of river stones. When our gazes met, she gave the smallest shake of her head, then pivoted on her heel and started walking. I followed, the way one follows a memory hesitantly, but with the certainty that something essential is leading you. We didn't speak until we reached the parking lot behind the old bakery. The smell of yeast and cinnamon drifted through a back door propped with a bucket. The woman turned, collapsed the umbrella, and held out her hand. "Clara," she said. And yes, that Clara. A small electricity moved through me. The letters were suddenly heavy, as if they were still in my bag, though I'd left them hidden beneath the flour tin. You were... The words felt like brittle bones. "The woman in his letters," she said quietly, "but not the mistress you think." "Then what?" "The only person he told the truth to. At least some of it." She looked at me the way one looks at an old photograph, with tenderness and suspicion. "He said if anything happened, you would need to be pulled like a needle through fabric swiftly, before the cloth puckered." Anger rose like heat in my face. Pulled from where? My home? My life? He had no right. He had only that, she said gently, the right to run and pull others with him. I tried to stop him. Once, he said he'd made his choices long before you or I knew his name. She glanced at the alley mouth. We shouldn't linger. "Before we go anywhere," I said, straightening, "tell me who I buried." She studied me as if measuring what the truth might cost. "A man who wore your husband's ring, a courier, disposable, in the way men become when others need alibis." My voice dropped to a thread. "And my Henry? Where is he?" Her mouth tightened. "Hiding if he's alive, hunting if he isn't." I wanted to crumble right there next to the bakery's warm air. But grief has a second wind, and it filled me. What did he do? All those passports, those names. If he was a criminal, say it. "Criminal is a wardrobe word," she said. "It fits anyone if you tug hard enough. He did jobs, some for money, some for penance. He called it carrying fire in a paper box." She reached into her coat and handed me a small leather folio. "He told me to give you this if the funeral was wrong. He said you would recognize the handwriting." Inside the folio there were places for cards, a faded photograph of a boy at the seaside with a bucket, and a folded sheet. When I unfolded it, I recognized the careful script, the long-tailed Y, my husband's hand, E.M. If you're reading this, it means I failed at the thing I hoped to do, without breaking your heart. I have kept you in the dark to keep you whole. Forgive me. Go with the woman who brings the blue umbrella. She knew me before I knew how to lie. H. The bakery's clock chimed 11, a soft bell pressed by a gloved finger. I folded the letter and tucked it against my chest like a second sternum. Clara motioned to a car. A modest gray sedan with the kind of face you forget after passing. "We'll drive to a place where we can talk. For now, just know this. There are men who believe your husband stole something from them. They've been looking for years. The funeral was bait. You showed your grief and they measured it." "In the cemetery?" I asked, feeling suddenly naked at the thought of men watching my sorrow as if it were theater. "Everywhere," she said. "Grief leaves fingerprints." "Detective Moore," I whispered. "The man on the phone said I couldn't trust him. Moore keeps the dogs from biting the wrong ankles," Clara said. "Sometimes he has to let them bite the right ones." We drove out of town, past fields the color of old wheat and a pond with a scum like jade glass. I watched the world roll by and tried to stitch my life back into a shape that could be worn. The name Eleanor May felt too delicate for what I was learning. Perhaps I needed to become a woman with fewer vowels, someone with edges. Clara parked beside an abandoned train depot, its windows boarded, its paint flaking like parchment. Inside, it smelled of oil and damp wood, and the floor creaked in disapproval. We sat on a bench where lovers once waited for whistles and steam. "Start at the beginning," I said. "What did he steal?" "Not a what," she said. "A who." For a moment the room tilted. The bench felt like a plank on a ship. "A who?" she nodded. "A boy. He smuggled a boy out of a place that wanted him disappeared. The boy grew, learned to walk like a shadow. Your husband taught him, protected him, hid him in your life like a seam you never noticed." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but the sound that came out was an old woman's wheeze. "There was never a boy in our home." Clara's eyes softened. "Not a child like a son in a crib. A boy like the memory of himself. He saw a 13-year-old run from men with teeth. He never forgot. He built new names until they bridged to your door. He thought if he could just be ordinary long enough, the past would decide it had the wrong address." She looked past me toward the broken window where a shard of sky showed. "It never does." "Then who called me?" I asked. "Who said he only knew the last name?" "A friend from those days," she said, "or an enemy cosplaying as one. With them, the tune is similar help that sounds like a fuse being lit." "Why tell me any of this?" I asked, suddenly so tired my bones felt lined with sand. "Why not let me grieve the man I thought I had?" "Because they will come again," she said, "and next time they won't settle for your mailbox. They will root through your life until the nails squeal. If you don't know what you're running from, you'll run in circles." I pressed my palms together and felt the thin bones. "Then teach me to run in a straight line." Clara smiled without joy. "He said you would say that." She took out a scrap of paper and slid it across to me. "A name, an address, a storage lot on the edge of town. He left something for you there, under a false lease. He said it was the last thing you'd need to decide whether to love the truth more than the memory." "How do I open it?" I asked. "You already have," she said softly. "The key you found was cut twice. Hold it to the light." I pulled the key from my pocket, my old cardigan making a small nest for it in my lap. When I tilted it toward the window, I saw it that faint notch, almost invisible. A second pattern etched into the metal like a whisper on steel. "Bring nothing you cannot lose," Clara said, standing. "And remember, if you see more before I do, tell him to stop trying to be the hinge. Doors like this don't need hinges. They fall." As we stepped back into the day, a train horn sounded somewhere far off, the kind that makes a person believe in roads they can't see. I tucked the key into the little pocket inside my purse and felt the secret press against me like a pulse. I told myself I was ready to unlock whatever waited at that storage lot. I told myself I wanted the truth, no matter how it rewrote my anniversaries, my recipes, my photographs, my prayers. But the closer we drove, the more I felt the strangest sensation that I was not traveling toward the truth at all. I was traveling toward a face I had seen 1,000 times and never recognized. The storage lot sat behind a chain-link fence. the kind of place where forgotten things outlasted their owners. A faded sign read Westford Self-Storage Units 201, 340. The December wind sliced through my coat, carrying the metallic rattle of loose padlocks. Clara parked the car a few blocks away, insisting we walk the rest. "I see what cars tell them to," she muttered. I didn't argue. I was past the point of argument. I was a shadow carrying another shadow's secrets. Unit 214. That was the number on the scrap she'd handed me. The key, warm from my palm, slipped into the lock and turned easily as if it had been waiting for me all along. When the door rolled up, dust spiraled in the cold air, revealing a small room no bigger than my dining area. Boxes stacked neatly to the ceiling, all labeled with the same handwriting, Henry's handwriting. My throat tightened. "Take your time," Clara said softly, standing by the entrance. "He wanted you to see it first." I stepped inside. The scent was strange old paper, leather, and something faintly chemical. The first box I opened held notebooks, each dated and numbered. His meticulous scrawl filled page after page. Places, coordinates, notes written in codes I couldn't read. Another box contained old photographs, faces of strangers, children and adults, caught mid-laughter or mid-fear. I turned one over. Belgrade, 1979. Henry would have been barely 30 then, before he met me. I found a small tin envelope among the papers, sealed with wax. Inside was a photograph. I did recognize it was me, younger, standing in our garden, pruning roses, completely unaware someone had taken the picture. A date was written on the back, the 6th of May, 1992. My breath hitched. That was before we married. He had known me before I knew him. I stumbled back, clutching the photo. "He watched me," I whispered. Clara's eyes flicked up, cautious. "He was a sign to protect you, Eleanor. Long before he was your husband." My heart slammed against my ribs. "Protect me from what?" "The same people who took the boy he saved. You were the last person connected to that night by accident or by fate. I don't know. They traced him through you once, years ago. He stayed close ever since." I wanted to scream, but the sound died in my chest. I looked around the room, every box a chapter I had never been allowed to read. My entire marriage was an assignment, a perimeter he built to keep the wolves out. The anniversaries, the laughter, the quiet nights with his hand over mine, it was all part of his camouflage. "He loved you," Clara said, as if reading my thoughts. "But Henry, whatever name you call him, was never free to live as just a man. He built his cage carefully, even if he lined it with tenderness." I sank onto an overturned crate. Then why did he die? If he was hiding, why not run again? She hesitated. "Because he found something they wanted, and he thought hiding it inside your life would make it invisible." From the far corner, something glinted a safe, bolted to the concrete floor. Clara noticed my stare. "That's why we came," she said. "Open it." The same key fit perfectly. When the door clicked open, inside was only one thing, a small wooden box, velvet-lined, containing a locket. I lifted it carefully. Inside was a faded photo of a young boy with pale eyes and an inscription beneath for E.M., so she never forgets who he saved. The initials mine felt like a brand on the metal. I looked up at Clara, my voice breaking. He said it was a boy. Is this him? Who is he? She took a deep breath. The boy grew up under another name. Changed places, faces, but your husband never stopped watching him. He used to say the boy was his atonement. That saving him cost more than he could repay. Outside, a car door slammed. We froze. Clara pulled me to the side and peered through the slats. Two men in dark coats walked toward the lot, one holding a clipboard, the other scanning the units. "We have to go," she whispered. I stuffed the locket into my coat pocket and followed her out the back gate, our feet crunching over frost. We barely made it behind a dumpster when the men entered Unit 214. I heard the door clatter open, then the sound of boxes tearing. Clara's hand found mine. They followed us. Someone tipped them off. Who? Maybe more. Maybe the man on the phone. At this point, trust is a luxury. We waited until silence fell again. Then we slipped back toward the car, moving like two ghosts avoiding the living. Once we were inside, Clara drove without speaking, her eyes fixed ahead. "What now?" I asked. "You go back to your house," she said. "Act normal. Burn the letters, keep the locket. If they come again, they'll think you know nothing." "And you?" "I have my own debts to settle with Henry's past." When she dropped me off at the corner of my street, she didn't say goodbye. The blue umbrella lay folded on the seat beside her like a flag at half-mast. I watched her drive away until the taillights disappeared. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the locket in my palm. I opened it again and again, tracing the boy's face with my fingertip. There was something hauntingly familiar about his eyes, not just in their shape, but in their gaze, the same calm, watchful look Henry had whenever I spoke about my childhood. On impulse, I went to the attic and found an old family album, dust thick on the cover. Inside, faded photos of my parents, my siblings, and one of a distant cousin I'd met only once, a child taken in by an uncle who lived overseas. He'd vanished before adulthood. The resemblance was uncanny. My hands shook. I flipped through the pages faster, desperate for proof. Then I saw it on the back of a photograph, written in my mother's careful hand. Elias 1970. Elias, the same name engraved faintly beneath the locket's hinge. I pressed my hands over my face. Oh, God. The realization crashed over me like cold water. Henry hadn't just saved a stranger's boy. He had saved mine. The child my family had lost in a border war, my nephew, thought dead all these years, was the one Henry rescued. He'd carried that secret for decades, built his life around protecting me from the people who wanted to erase the child's existence. I understood now why the letter said, "Don't trust anyone," especially the man they buried. Whoever died in that car wasn't Henry, it was the man sent to end him. At dawn, I burned the letters, one by one. Smoke curled toward the ceiling like ghosts taking flight. Only the photograph I kept, the one of me in the garden and the locket, pressed against my heart. For the first time since the funeral, I felt him near not as a ghost, but as a presence stitched through every secret he left behind. But peace was fragile, because 2 days later, a knock came at the door. When I opened it, Detective Moore stood there, hat in hand. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said quietly, "we found something near the bridge where your husband's car crashed." He pulled out a small evidence bag. Inside was a silver lighter engraved with the initials H. W. But when I looked closer, beneath the initials was another engraving, faint but visible under the right light, E. M. He handed it to me. "Your husband was full of surprises, wasn't he?" I smiled faintly, though my stomach churned. "You have no idea, Detective." He tipped his hat and walked back to his car. When he was gone, I closed the door, locking it tight. Then I turned the lighter over once more, and for the briefest moment, I saw it the same looping Y as in the letter. It wasn't a lighter at all. It was a signal, a clue, and somewhere out there, Henry, whatever his name truly was still alive. For the next 2 nights, I didn't sleep. Every creak in the hallway sounded like footsteps. Every gust through the window felt like a whisper from someone waiting just beyond the curtains. I kept the lighter close, sometimes flicking it open to watch the blue flame bloom and vanish. The engraving, E, M, beneath H, W, glimmered like a heartbeat in metal. It wasn't just a keepsake. It was a message. By the 3rd morning, the tension broke. I took the lighter to Henry's old study, the one I'd once been too polite to question, where he'd spent long evenings balancing accounts or fixing paperwork. The room smelled faintly of pipe smoke and lemon polish, though I hadn't cleaned it since the funeral. His desk drawer stuck halfway open, and when I yanked it free, a slip of paper fluttered out. On it, 3 words in his unmistakable hand: "Fire reveals truth." I stared at the lighter, then at the photo frame on the desk, the one with our wedding picture. My hand trembled as I lifted the glass. Behind the photo, taped to the frame's back, was another folded note. The paper was singed at the corner, as if someone had tested fire on it already. I unfolded it slowly. E. M. If you've come this far, you're ready. The lighter's flame isn't for warmth. It's for the lock behind the clock. Burn the edge, and it will open. The lock behind the clock. My eyes darted to the mantelpiece. Henry's old grandfather clock, its pendulum frozen since the day he died. I reached behind it, and there, hidden behind the wooden frame, was a small metallic latch, sealed with what looked like wax. My pulse roared in my ears. I flicked the lighter. The flame licked across the wax, and within seconds, the latch popped open. Inside the clock, behind a false panel, was a slim envelope and a small black cassette tape. The envelope contained a single photograph, Henry standing with Clara and a man I'd never seen before, outside what looked like a hospital. The man's face was pale, sharp, but his eyes, those same pale eyes from the locket, stared straight at the camera. Elias, grown, alive. On the back of the photo, written in Henry's neat hand, "They'll never stop looking for him." But neither will I. The cassette was labeled only with my name. No year, no number. I didn't even own a working tape player anymore, but the old one in the attic still hummed faintly when plugged in. I carried it upstairs like an artifact, each step creaking under the weight of what I was about to hear. When I pressed play, static filled the room, then a breath, and then his voice, my husband's voice. Calm, deliberate, and so heartbreakingly familiar that my knees gave out. Eleanor, if you're hearing this, I've either succeeded or failed so spectacularly that silence is no longer safe. You must know the truth. I wasn't born Henry Whitaker. That name belonged to a man I met once, long ago a friend I couldn't save. When he died, I took his name and used it to bury the man I was. I covered my mouth, the tears already coming. I met you by accident. His voice continued, softer now. Or maybe not. Fate has a sense of humor. You were pruning roses outside your mother's house, humming that old hymn your father loved. I recognized you. I'd seen your picture years before, in a file that was never meant to exist. The file about the boy Elias, your nephew. I couldn't tell you then, and maybe I still can't now, but I swore to protect what remained of that night. I failed the first time. I didn't want to fail again. The tape crackled, then resumed. They'll come for you when I'm gone, not because of who you are, but because of what you carry. They'll think I left it with you, the truth about Elias, the documents, the photographs. But what they don't know is that the truth isn't in a box or a vault. It's in a person. And that person is still alive. The tape clicked off, then back on. His voice trembled slightly now. If you find Clara, trust her once, no more than that. And if you ever see more again, run. He's not who he says he is. The tape stopped. The silence that followed felt alive. I rewound it, played it again, just to hear his voice one more time, to make sure I hadn't imagined it. Run. That word burned itself into my mind. By evening, I'd made my decision. I packed a small bag, the lighter, the locket, the photograph, and a coat thick enough to brave the December chill. If he was right, if Elias was still alive, I needed to find him before someone else did. But fate, it seemed, was always one step ahead of me. When I came downstairs, the front door was slightly open. I knew I'd locked it. I froze, clutching the banister. Then a shadow moved from the hallway, slow, deliberate. Mrs. Whitaker? Detective Moore stepped into view, his hat in his hand again, his smile polite, familiar. Wrong. Apologies for the intrusion. I knocked. The door must have been ajar. My throat tightened. You startled me. He looked around the room, eyes settling on the old clock. Lovely piece. Grandfather clocks always hide secrets, don't they? I said nothing. He walked closer, fingers tracing the wood. You've been busy, he said quietly. Visiting storage lots, burning letters, meeting old friends. We keep track of things like that. Every word was a blade. You've been following me. He smiled faintly. Protecting you, Mrs. Whitaker. Same as your husband tried to do. But you've made it harder than it needs to be. My mind raced. The lighter, the tape, the warning. Run. What do you want? I asked. Closure, he said simply. Your husband stole something. Not a boy. Not anymore. A man now one who knows too much. We just want him back. Back? I whispered. He's not yours to claim. Moore's gaze softened. almost pitying. "You don't know the whole story. Henry made a deal years ago. He didn't just save the boy, he turned him into a weapon. And when that weapon decided it wanted peace, everyone involved had to pay, including him. It was too much. My world already cracked, split wide open." "You're lying," he sighed, pulling a card from his pocket. "If you find the boy, call me, before someone else does." When he turned to leave, I caught sight of something at his collar, a faint scar running down his neck, the same kind Henry had from a bullet wound he said was an old fishing accident. The realization hit me so hard I nearly fell. He wasn't like Henry. He was connected to him, a mirror from the same shattered glass. When he left, I locked the door and slid down against it, shaking. The card he'd left on the table bore no address, only a number and a single symbol in the corner, a keyhole. That night I sat in the dark, the lighter flickering in my hand. Each spark cast fleeting shapes across the wall, faces, memories, ghosts. Henry's voice echoed in my head. Fire reveals truth. So I did it. I burned the card, and in the flame's light, just before the paper curled into ash, I saw something appear beneath the printed number hidden ink, glowing faintly blue. "He's closer than you think." My hand trembled so violently I dropped the lighter. Outside, the wind rose, and with it the faintest sound, a man's voice, whispering my name, "Eleanor." I turned toward the window, and there, standing in the moonlight, was a silhouette I knew by heart. For a heartbeat, the world forgot to breathe. The moonlight carved the silhouette in silver broad shoulders, the familiar slope of the neck, that small lean forward he always had when peering through glass. I didn't move. Couldn't. My breath fogged against the window pane as I whispered, "Henry?" The figure stepped closer, and the porch light caught half his face. The years had rearranged him more lines, more shadows, but it was him, or the ghost of him. My knees nearly gave out. I unlocked the door before I could convince myself not to. He slipped inside like a shadow returning home. The scent of him, cedar, smoke, rain, flooded the hallway. His eyes met mine, and in them lived everything unsaid. Apologies, warnings, love, regret. "You're supposed to be dead," I said, my voice breaking somewhere between disbelief and prayer. He smiled faintly. "Supposed to be. That was the plan." I staggered back. "Then who did I bury?" He exhaled, gaze dropping to the floor. "A man who volunteered to die as me. He owed me more than I could ever repay. He wanted peace. I gave him my name, and he gave me his silence. You let me mourn you," I whispered. "You let me bury you. I had to." His voice cracked. "They were watching the funeral, Eleanor. If I'd shown a pulse, they would have taken you next. I couldn't risk it." I pressed a trembling hand against my chest, feeling the locket beneath my blouse. "All those nights I prayed for you. You were out there, alive, watching me suffer?" His jaw tightened. "I watched to make sure no one touched you. That's the only reason I came. Now they know you have the locket." "Moore's been here, hasn't he?" I swallowed hard. He said he wanted closure. A bitter laugh escaped him. Moore's definition of closure involves a bullet. The house felt smaller with him in it. as if the walls knew the weight of his lies. I walked to the kitchen, poured tea with shaking hands, and set a cup in front of him like habit had muscle memory. He didn't drink. "I listened to the tape," I said finally. He nodded once. "Then you know most of it." "Not all." My eyes burned. "You saved Elias, my nephew, but you never told me." He closed his eyes, pain flickering across his face. "Because I didn't want you to live with that shadow. You deserved peace. I tried to end the circle, erase the past, the names, the debts, but some things stay hungry." He looked older, not in years, but in weight, the kind carried by men who've outlived their own names. "Elias is still alive?" I asked. Henry nodded. He changed his face again. "Lives under another name, somewhere quiet. He has a daughter now." I blinked. "A daughter. She's about 15, smart, like you. Same eyes." He hesitated. "That's why Moore's after him. They want what he memorized the list, the people who paid for disappearances. It's not just a boy they're hunting now. It's everything they built on those stolen lives." I sank into the chair opposite him, the floor spinning slightly. "You could have told me." "I couldn't," he said softly. "Every truth I told turned into a map someone else could use against you." Silence swallowed us. The only sound was the tick of the old clock, the same one that had hidden his secrets. Finally I said, "You can't stay here. They'll come." "I know. Then why did you?" He looked at me the way he did when I used to ask questions he didn't want to answer, half affection, half warning. "Because the next part needs you. They'll think you're just the grieving widow. That gives you cover. There's a safe house near the coast. In a week, a woman named Kira will contact you. You'll tell her you're delivering flowers. She'll know what that means." I shook my head. "I'm too old for this." He smiled sadly. "No one's too old to finish what was started." "Finish it how?" "By ending it where it began," he said. "In the same place I found Elias the orphanage in Belgrade. That's where the first files were kept. That's where the last copy still is. If Moore or his people get there first, everything starts again." I stared at him, disbelief wrestling with dread. "You're asking me to go back to the beginning of your lies." He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. The warmth of it undid me completely. "I'm asking you to help me bury them properly this time." Outside, headlights swept across the front yard. He froze. I turned toward the window, heart slamming. A dark sedan idled near the gate. "Too late," he whispered. He grabbed my arm. "Basement. Now." We slipped down the narrow steps as the front door burst open upstairs. Heavy boots, flashlights, voices barking orders. The walls vibrated with each stomp. Henry pulled a pistol from inside his coat, the kind he'd sworn he hadn't touched in decades. "Stay behind me," he said. Through the cracks in the basement door, I saw a shadow pass. Moore's voice followed, calm, unhurried. "Henry, come now. You're only delaying the inevitable." Henry didn't answer. He motioned for me to move toward the small storm exit at the back. I hesitated. "You can't fight them all." He gave me a faint smile. "You've never seen me try." He moved toward the stairs silently, like a man stepping into memory. The gunfire started almost immediately, loud, shattering, final. I ducked, covering my ears. Something heavy fell upstairs. Then silence. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then a groan, a door opening. Moore's voice again, quieter this time. "You should have stayed dead." My heart seized. I crawled toward the storm exit, fumbling with the latch, and pushed it open just enough to let the night air in. A cold gust hit my face. Then another sound closer, wet, uneven footsteps. "Eleanor," Henry called, voice hoarse, weak. "Go." I turned. He was on the steps, blood spreading across his sleeve, his other hand gripping the railing. Behind him, Moore descended slowly, pistol drawn. Henry raised his gun again, but his arm trembled. Moore kicked it aside and aimed at his chest. "I told you closure." Something in me snapped. I lunged for the lighter, flicked it on, and hurled it at the old furnace beside the wall. The small explosion sent a burst of fire roaring up between us. Moore stumbled back, cursing. Henry grabbed my arm, dragging me through the storm exit just as the blast tore through the basement. We collapsed in the garden, choking on smoke. Flames licked through the basement windows, painting the night orange. Henry coughed, blood staining his lips. "You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have come back," I said, tears streaking my soot-covered face. He smiled faintly, almost peacefully. "I had to see you one last time." Sirens wailed in the distance. The house, the life I'd built brick by brick, was collapsing behind us. "Henry," I whispered, holding his hand. "Stay with me." He looked at me, eyes soft. "Tell him. Tell Elias. I kept my promise." Then his hand went limp. The sirens grew louder. I pressed his hand to my chest, refusing to let go, even as the world around us burned. When they pulled me away, I didn't scream. I just kept repeating the same words under my breath, like a prayer or a curse. Fire reveals truth. And when the dawn came, painting the sky gray with ash, I realized it had. Because lying beside Henry's body, half buried in the garden soil, was something small and metal. His watch cracked open, revealing a hidden microchip inside. The final secret, the last truth. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of the end. The hospital smelled like bleach and lost time. They kept me 2 nights for smoke inhalation, though it wasn't the smoke that made breathing difficult, it was the emptiness beside me. Every time the nurse adjusted my IV, I turned toward the next bed, half expecting to see Henry lying there, eyes fluttering open with that half-smile he always gave when he woke before me. But the bed stayed cold, untouched. The police came by in shifts, questions, forms, reassurances that sounded rehearsed. They ruled the fire an accident. Old wiring, they said. I nodded because fighting their version of truth would only invite more eyes. The only one who didn't visit was Detective Moore. The reports said he hadn't been found. The house had collapsed before rescue teams arrived, but I knew he was still out there. When they discharged me, I left with nothing but the clothes they gave me, a brown envelope with personal effects scrawled across it, and the watch, Henry's watch, sealed in a plastic bag. The nurse told me gently that I should try to rest. "You've lost a lot," she said. She was wrong. I hadn't lost everything. Not yet. At home, or what remained of it, the air still smelled of ash. The garden was a blackened skeleton, the roses burnt down to wire stems. But near the charred oak bench where Henry used to smoke, I found the locket glinting among the debris, untouched by fire. The chain had melted, but the photo inside the boy, Elias, was unharmed. I took it as a sign. That night, I opened the watch. The microchip inside was no larger than a fingernail, embedded beneath the cracked glass. Henry must have hidden it before he came to me, knowing someone would find it when the smoke cleared. I had no idea how to read it, but Clara would if she was still alive. I took the next train to the coast. The landscape slid by in a blur, wet fields, crooked fences, a horizon that felt both endless and claustrophobic. I clutched Henry's coat tight, the one they'd given me from the wreck site, the lining still smelling faintly of smoke and sea salt. In Westford, the harbor wind sliced through me like regret. The address Henry had given me, the safe house, was scrawled on the back of an old receipt tucked into the coat. Seabird Inn, room 3B. When I knocked, the door opened before my hand fell back to my side. Clara stood there, paler, thinner, but alive. "You made it," she said softly. "I lost him again," I whispered. Her eyes flickered down. "You never really lost him. He knew how this would end." Inside, the room was dim, curtains drawn tight. On the table sat a small laptop, a burner phone, and 2 steaming mugs of tea. She gestured to the seat opposite. "Sit. Tell me everything." I told her about the fire, the confrontation, the lighter, the watch. When I placed the microchip on the table, her breath caught. "So he did it," she murmured. "He really found the file. What's on it?" She hesitated, then slid the chip into the laptop. The screen blinked to life, lines of encrypted text scrolling faster than I could read. Then images, faces, dozens of them, some marked deceased, others labeled relocated, and there, in the center of the list, one name pulsing faintly in blue, Elias Morton. My breath caught. "That's him," Clara nodded. And below that look, beneath his name were 2 words, "Active Guardian." My heart stuttered. "Henry?" "No," she said. "The registry updates automatically. When one guardian dies, it assigns another. Henry must have programmed it that way before the fire." She clicked again. A new line appeared. "E.M. activated." It took me a moment to understand. "Me," I whispered. "He made me the guardian." Clara's voice softened. "He trusted no one else." I leaned back, the room spinning slightly. All my life, I'd been ordinary a wife, a teacher, a woman who baked for church picnics, and now I was the keeper of a secret men had killed for. "Can we destroy it?" I asked. "We can bury it deeper," she said. "Somewhere even more can't dig. But it'll mean leaving everything behind. No records, no trace. You'd have to vanish, Eleanor." I looked out the window. The sea was gray, restless, the horizon bleeding into the clouds. Henry had lived half his life in shadows. Could I do the same? At my age? Could I trade comfort for truth? Before I could answer, the phone on the table buzzed once. Clara grabbed it. eyes narrowing. "Unknown number," she pressed speaker. A voice, low and familiar. "I told you she'd find the watch. More." Clara stood abruptly, scanning the room. "How did you—" "Because I taught him everything he knew," Moore interrupted. "And he taught you. The circle closes tonight." The line went dead. Outside, headlights cut across the thin curtain fabric. Clara grabbed the laptop, yanked out the chip, and shoved it into my hand. "Go. Back door. Take the East Pier. There's an old fishing boat tied there, number 17. The keys are under the seat. Don't look back. What about you?" She smiled faintly, that same calm sadness Henry had worn. "Someone has to buy time." I didn't argue. I ran. The night air burned in my lungs, down the narrow street, through the smell of salt and diesel, to the pier where the boats rocked like nervous animals. "Number 17, a chipped blue hull. Name half peeled away." I climbed aboard, hands shaking, found the keys just where she said. When I turned the ignition, the engine coughed alive. Behind me, at the inn, a gunshot cracked the night, then another. I didn't wait to see. The boat drifted into the black water, the town shrinking behind me. I don't know how long I sailed, minutes, hours. Time lost meaning. The horizon slowly lifted with dawn, and the sea turned the color of pewter. In my pocket, the microchip felt like a heartbeat. I thought of Henry, of his tired eyes the last time he looked at me, of the words he whispered as the flames rose. Tell him I kept my promise. When I finally reached the other shore, a nameless strip of coast lined with fog and gulls, I buried the chip beneath the roots of an old driftwood tree. No ceremony, just soil, salt, and silence. As I stood there, the tide washed over my shoes, cold and forgiving. The wind carried the faintest echo his voice, or maybe memory. "Fire reveals truth," I whispered back. "Then let the sea hide it." Years have passed since that night. I live quietly now, in a small village where no one knows my name. I tend a garden again, wild roses that bloom in stubborn defiance of the salt air. Every evening I light a candle by the window, not out of grief, but gratitude. For Henry, for Elias, for the chance to finish the story on my own terms. Sometimes a letter arrives, no return address, just a single line written in looping handwriting, still watching the horizon. All is safe. I don't know if it's Elias or Clara or some fragment of the life I left behind. I only know that I never feel truly alone, because in the hush before night, when the sea sighs against the shore, I can almost hear him, his voice warm and steady, just as it was all those years ago. Even if they bury me again, E.M. Don't believe it. Some loves outlive their names. And I smile, whispering into the dark. I never did, Henry. I never did.